Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have none other than Tom Peters, who needs very little introduction, but he has shaped generations of leaders through his excellent thinking, but more importantly, putting people at the center of how businesses are shaped up. We are going to have a quick fire 30-minute conversation with him on not just his past thinking, but how he sees the new world today through his lens of excellence and all the models he talks about. Tom, thank you for doing this. As ever, again, as I mentioned, grateful, honored to be talking with you.
Well, it goes both ways. I am delighted to be here, and doubly so because you're speaking to me from Los Angeles, and I'm a sort of a Californian.
Thank you so much. And we are from Caltech Executive Education. My name is Hari Aburi. I teach agility. And we have Mary and the other Tom, Tom Spitale, who teach brand strategy, marketing, and customer segmentation for our corporate executive courses that we run.
Isn't it true that the lowest IQs of Caltech kids are around 300?
Well, I won't certainly deny that because I just don't know what the fact is, but surely it's high up there somewhere.
Oh yeah, no, it's probably dead flat even with MIT. Well, one of my favorite days, and it was probably not laughed at in Cambridge, is there was a little New York Times article, and the title of it was Harvard, the Stanford of the East. And I loved it. Well, because forever and ever and ever, like when I was there 1,000 years ago, Stanford was always the Harvard of the West, and it was, vaguely annoying. But you all are technology people. We won.
Yeah, we call ourselves the home of curious leaders.
Yeah,
right.
Like that.
And with that, let me turn over to Mary. Mary, all yours.
Thank you, Tom. I was so looking forward to talking to you. I'm such a fan, and we see a lot of your writings about excellent companies, but I'm really curious what your personal characteristics are that you felt made you successful.
Well, there really is an easy answer, and it has two words: my mother. No, I will tell you, this is very personal to me. The single thing on earth, not quite true, which annoys me most is successful people who think they deserve their success. It really is true. I worked hard and so on, but the first 99% were out of the gene pool. And I was born in 1942, white, Protestant, male, American. You would have had to work really hard to screw that up. But anyway, to answer, well, then we continue with my mother again. My mother drove me beyond belief. I'm not sure why, but she did. I was visiting friends about 4 or 5 years ago, and I knew him well, and I knew his wife less well. But we were talking about something, and I said to her, I said, Anne, my mother drove me from the age of 5. She didn't know me from Adam. She looked at me and said, I bet it was about 3, actually. And so, and I like to talk about this way because, as I said, I can't think of anything that I did that wasn't driven by genes and luck. The luck of where you are, for God's sakes. I mean, it's just, I'm rabid on this topic. I worked hard and I went to schools like Stanford and so on and so forth. And it was not, why did I go to Stanford, for God's sakes? Because I didn't know what to do after I got out of the Navy. I wanted to go to business school because people who didn't know what they wanted to do were starting to go to business school. It was January of 70, I guess. I was audacious enough to only apply to 2 schools, Stanford and Harvard. They were both kind enough to accept me. When I applied to Harvard, and I would guess we've got a bunch of people who've been back east When I applied to Harvard, it was one of those days in January where the slush was 6 inches deep on every road. And then I flew in a Navy plane out to Moffett Field in Mountain View, California, went to Palo Alto. And you guys know because you're in California, but there are about 5 days of a year, which is the day after a big storm has been through. And literally, I could see from Palo Alto to the Sierras. And so the answer is, why did I go to Stanford? The weather.
Thank you, Tom. All right, I think you have a question next, right?
Yeah, one of the curiosity facts I have is that you wrote these books many years ago without necessarily foreseeing the impact that technology would have both on business and society. So as our world increasingly got digitized, moved away from classical manufacturing, agricultural economies, how do you see the world today? Do those excellence principles still apply? How has it shaped your thinking? What do you think of companies like Amazon and all of these new players who are shaping our societies and human behavior?
Well, it's a little different in Silicon Valley, but one thing I like to say in beginning an answer to that question is we focus on Amazon, we focus still on the Fortune 500. In the United States, 93% of us don't work for the Fortune 500. The real economy is the 2 and 5 and 10 and 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 and 70. I mean, I would rather get a letter saying, you changed my life with your ideas, from a woman or a man running a 70-person company in Wichita or LA for that matter, than I would get a letter from the CEO of a Fortune 500 company or even Bezos. You know, it's, you know, there obviously there's a 3-hour response to your question. The thing I guess I'm most known for today, which I would argue, I mean, is it's always about the people. Well, it is always about the people. And again, I'll tell you a little teeny story about that. When I graduated from college, we had just started our little foray into Vietnam. The Navy had paid my way through Cornell Engineering School. So I ended up going into the Navy. I was a civil engineer. So I was part of something called the Navy Seabees. And what that meant is I was on the ground building gun emplacements and camps and bridges and so on for the sailors. So here I am with this amazing, incredible, awesome degree from Cornell. I said to somebody I could have redesigned the Verzano Narrows Bridge with both hands behind my back and my eyes closed. But I land in the middle of the night, and you know, those who know the Navy, there are the senior enlisted people, the chief petty officers who actually do the work. But I was given responsibility for a 15-person group. And even though the chief would do the work, I was the leader who was responsible effectively for their life and death. Why am I telling you this story? Because my leadership training out of that great school in Ithaca, New York was zero. It was shit. It was nothing. And, you know, that was 1970, 50, excuse the phone in the background. It was 1970. And so 52 years later, I'm still pissed off. You know, I really am. I was totally unprepared for, and you know, my wife and I spent some time in Auckland and in New Zealand, and I teach at the business school in Auckland occasionally. And most of the kids I've got are, a lot of them from China, are 27, 28, 29-year-old kids, engineers. But the reality is, if you're an engineer and you're worth a damn, by your 3rd year, you'll be leading project teams. And as I like to say to them, when that happens, there's a big day when the switch turns and suddenly the rest of your adult life is about people. Energizing people, motivating people, taking care of people. And that's at least, I mean, it was this fascinating thing. I've had it in my last 2 books. Google did a study of its best employees and its most innovative teams. You know, Google, the starting IQ is about 250. they came up with 8 attributes associated with best employees. One of them had to do with technology, and 7 of them were the soft stuff, like listening, paying attention, seeking other people's views. All of it was the people stuff. Then they did the same darn thing with teams, which teams are the most innovative, and they have this stupid thing they do, which is A teams and B teams. But the B teams always beat the hell out of the A teams, because the B teams did things like listen to each other. One specifically, and I know this is a Valley problem, one specific things the B teams didn't have that the A teams had was no bullying. And, you know, intellectual bullying is common as dirt in Silicon Valley. So, you know, it was people in 82, it's people today, it's people in Google, it's people in a 23-person restaurant. And then when you get to my age, there's a reasonably good chance if you're 79 that you're not going to be around at 158. So I'm well past halfway. And David Brooks, the New York Times columnist, wrote a wonderful article, op-ed, maybe a year or two ago now. And it said, there are 2 things, 2 ways of looking at life. And those 2 ways are resume virtues and eulogy virtues. And the resume virtues are, where did you graduate? How many steps up the ladder did you go at your company? What's your net worth, and so on. And the eulogy virtues are, what do they say about you at your funeral? And when that day comes, and I hope mine's not quick, and yours will be a lot longer than mine probably, and God bless you, I hope you live forever. But in eulogies, all you talk about is, you know, how Tom treated people, and did he pay attention? And, you know, I don't think my focus on that is because I'm old. I think it's my focus is on that. But I used to have this, used a lot of 35mm slides, and one of them had a tombstone. And on the tombstone was $23,817,264.07 net worth of the individual when the market closed on the day he died. And my point is, there's never been a tombstone with net worth on it. And, you know, I went to the Presbyterian church when I was a kid, but I assure you I don't go to church very often now. So you ain't getting a religious speech. You know, no net worths on the tombstone. That's not what you're remembered for. And if you are, God help you.
but in quick response, Tom, to you and your wife, very healthy, long, happy life, and a bit of sunshine in New England, right? So
Why not?
Why not? Tom, all yours.
Tom, it's an honor to talk to you. I wanted to ask you about differentiation, because you write a lot about, in your books, companies that stand out win big, but many companies today seem to offer kind of like Me Too value propositions. They don't necessarily stand out, but they think that they do. Why is this, and what did you learn about excellence that can help these companies to really hold themselves to a higher standard when it comes to offering differentiated value in the market?
Well, I have a bias, and it started about 25 years ago, and that is, which is the centerpiece, in my opinion, the importance of design. And I wish I had the piece of paper in front of me, but it's this wonderful line that I use. It's by the religious gentleman of whatever, 80, 90 years ago, Thomas Merton, and he was talking about the Shakers. And he said the definition of a Shaker chair is that it was built by someone who thought that an angel might come and sit in it. And I love that, from Silicon Valley to the restaurant. And I think there's no excuse for anything less than really great and really human design. And I'll tell you a little tiny story. I got a pacemaker about 10 or 15 years ago. It's made by Medtronic. I have to upload about every 90 days. God, I wish I could upload in front of this group. The device that I use to upload it is the world's simplest app. It is the world's simplest machine. And, you know, it just drives me out of my mind. I mean, it's funny because I once met the CEO of Medtronic and I got his portable device and I called him and I said to him, I said, I just got to tell you what a great job you guys did. And, you know, that's uncharacteristic. That is not the average in any way, shape, or form. And I think there's no excuse for anything less than wonderful products. The aim is to be a little transformational. And I don't know why the hell you would waste your time if that wasn't your goal. And it's more than, it's more than the user stuff I'm talking about with Medtronic. The Medtronic device that I use is very beautiful. You know, it looks like it was designed by Apple. The curves are perfect. The box is perfect. The design does not have any extra buttons. I mean, we all know the Apple story, and, you know, I use the Apple quotes, and they're kind of like that Merton quote, where there was this wonderful thing that a quote I used by Jobs' wife, Lorraine Powell Jobs, and somebody asked her some question, and she said, Steve and Johnny Ive, the head designer forever at Apple, Steve and Johnny would spend hours talking about and arguing about corners, corners. And, you know, it was interesting when Steve died, and I consulted a little bit to Apple 1,000 years ago, like when they had about 100 employees. When Steve died, all the papers and stuff, he said this, I think, he was not an inventor, they said, he was a tinkerer. You know, he took something that was there, a clunky old BlackBerry or whatever we had before that, and he turned it into a piece of art. And, you know, to this day, my wife just got a new iPhone, and, you know, the case and the shape and so on, it's nice to hold in your hand. And again, it's also, I mean, A, it works, B, it differentiates, C, you can be proud of it, D, you can show it to your family. And why waste your time on earth if you're not trying to do something special? That and yeah, I mean, you know, we could go on about the answer to that for hours, because then when we talk about the 20 people we're leading and so on, if you're leading a team of 20 people and 17 of them are temps or whatever you want to call them these days, they're not on the payroll. If they are on a 6-month project with you, and less than 100% of them didn't walk out of that project having learned something and gone just a half a step up the ladder of being prepared for the environment that they're coming into, then you're an absolute loser as a boss. You're a jerk, in my opinion. And of course, the dirty little secret is that if I'm determined to focus on your growth, you're going to be determined to making whatever the heck it is that we make as wonderful as it can be. You know, in the best sense of the word, it's a sucker play. If I help you grow, you'll help me grow. But you know, as well as being able to, you know, have the eulogy virtues come in pretty well.
One of the fascinating things that I can remember is, to add to this comment, is there's a company called Siegel and Gale. It's a brand consulting company in New York that does the simplest brand index every year. The 9th edition is out. And typically in the bottom 10 brands, you see car rental companies, insurance companies, a few banks. But the important thing that I learned from that research is that simplest brands command a 30% more premium in pricing. Right? Because the consumers just want to pay for that simplicity.
Yeah, absolutely.
But most brands miss it in a sense.
Well, I assure you, my pacemaker is not cheap, but I'd pay 30%. I'd pay 30% for the user friendliness.
Mm-hmm.
And that would mean I'd give somebody a check, presumably for $500 or, you know, or something like that. I want to do one thing, because I don't want us to get out of here without it, and particularly since you all have a marketing bias. And I want to say to every single person associated with marketing that I can describe the most important, only things of importance in your life, and in 8 letters. WBEOHATM. If you wonder what that stands for, WBE is Women Buy Everything. OHATM is old people have all the money. It's true. It's absolutely, both things are absolutely true. You know, the stats are clear that women are the principal purchasers of everything. The stats are clear. You know, even the old boomers, and I'm actually older than boomers. There was something which I saw, and particularly since boys are kind enough to die 7 years before their spouses, that in addition to having better jobs and inheriting things, something like 1919 to 1924, $22 trillion of wealth will go into the hands of boomer women. And it's a huge number. And, you know, my line to the people who are watching us and so on in sexy Silicon Valley, if you have got a design team and 50% of the team is not over 40 or at least 40%, you are really effing up. And I would love to use the F word. And if 70% of your effing team is not women, then you're a real idiot. And I, you know, I really mean it. And, you know, the women's stuff is just bizarre. I've been working on it since 1996. The research is clear. Women are better leaders. Women are better negotiators. Women are better salespeople, and women are better investors. One of the best book titles ever was a book written by a woman by the name of Luann Lofton, who was associated with Motley Fool. And the title of the book was, oh God, I love this. Warren Buffett Invests Like a Girl and Why You Should Too. And well, the wonderful thing was Buffett had never heard of the book. And he wrote the first review at Amazon. And he said, I didn't really know I invested like a girl, but after reading this, I guess I did. And, you know, the sort of points that they made in there is, and, you know, today we're a lot more virtual. You and I are physically sitting at two trading desks, almost shoulder to shoulder. It is 30 minutes before the market closes. You've had a couple of pretty good hits today. I'm behind you. There's no bloody way you are walking away from that table with less money than me. So I buy any kind of shit during that last half hour, taking risks of all sorts. And stupid competitiveness like that is, you know, the sort of crap that men do. And women do all these weird things like think before they act. But anyway, those two secrets, you know.
I want to go on record because Mary and I work together saying everything you said about women is absolutely true, Tom. Do you hear that, Mary?
How about will you join me on the old people too?
That too?
Yeah.
Oh, have older people, because I think I qualify in there on your design team. Absolutely.
Well, here's a little trivial example. I'm wearing a zippered front thing today. One of the reasons I do is I'm 79, but I think this was true starting 20 years ago. Anybody who's my age or within 20, 15 years of my age is a little bit arthritic. And there is nothing harder on earth than buttoning the top button of a shirt. But the point is, the designer could make that go away. Use a snap, figure out a way to do a great button. And, you know, I know it's the most trivial example in the world, but it's not trivial. You know, and if I had said what I just said to Steve Jobs, he would nod. You know, or Johnny Ive, they would nod, because, you know, that's what Apple was all about. It was about the ability to button shirts, if you will. And, you know, and we do have all, I mean, as somebody said, and I'm a bit older, the older people have all the money, and given longevity stats over the last 80 or 90 years, they have a lot of years left.
Yeah.
Some guy, he was the head of AARP, and he said at the age of 50, you have 50% of your adult life left. And yet the average marketer treats a 50-year-old as if they were a 90-year-old with 1.7 feet in the grave. Yeah. Marketers are idiots. I really, really believe that on that score, both the women's score and the old people score. And I hope I'm not arrogant very often, but on this topic of oldies and women, I am delighted to be 27 on the 8 scale in terms of arrogance. I am effing right, period.
We love that. We love that argument. We love that push. And I think that's something that people are beginning to realize if they haven't already. But as you know, the socioeconomic conditions are so tough
Yeah.
with the biases that it, but having leaders like you speak out emphatically changes the game and makes a lot of difference. So thank you for that. So we have about 6 minutes left in our conversation. So I do want to pass it back to Mary and Tom for a couple of questions, and we'll pass it back to you for closing comments.
Yeah,
Mary?
thank you. Yeah, Tom, by the way, I love a couple of my favorite quotes of yours is, if you're not confused, you're not paying attention. I love it. I even use it with my kids. I think it applies in so many different ways. So thank you for that one. And then the one that we were talking about is, your mantra of, if it's not distinct, it's extinct. And that was,
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, what we completely believe. But my question is that you had these 8 characteristics, and in today's world, are there any, would there be a 9th, or is there now a characteristic that kind of replaces one of those?
Oh boy, that's a tough question. The characteristics have held up pretty well. I sure as heck would put people first instead of fourth. I mean, and one thing I really do want to say, given where you guys teach, given the people who are watching us, you are not talking to some guy who was a philosophy major and studied Plato. I have 4 degrees, and they are all tech degrees. 2 engineering degrees from Cornell, 2 business degrees from Stanford. So I ain't no soft touch. And, I mean, it's important to say that because, techies kind of think that way. I like to call myself a recovering engineer. And there's some truth to that. But I spend a lot more time on the people stuff now. And in a funny way, and you and I would have to have an hour-long conversation on this, I spend a little less time on the customer stuff. And the reason is, with things like design, I'm now so convinced, I said before at some level, go out and ask your customers what they want. Well, Steve Jobs never did that in a million years. He created something that was just incredibly awesome. That was, and again, you can do it with some incredibly sexy device like an iPhone. And obviously there's a lot of sexyism in the little thing that measures my heart, but it's just as doable in an electronic device, a little device that measures the heart, as it is from iPhones or whatever. So I'd put, if I wrote the 8 today, I would say, which is a different way of answering your question, people, design, and the 2 things we talked about, people, design, and women would be on my list for sure.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Tom, did you want to ask one?
Yeah, I don't know if we have enough time. This is a pretty broad question, but I want to talk, in the pursuit of wow, you talked about word of mouth being the best way to promote a brand. And with the advent since the writing of social media, which seems like it should be the best word of mouth mechanism ever invented. I just wanted to get your thoughts on just social media in general, the direction it's gone, and just generally, what you're observing as maybe best practices, worst practices regarding that.
There's no way on earth that I would give you a short answer to that.
Yeah.
When we look at what's going on across the Atlantic, when we look at what went on, and I don't care what your party affiliation is, in the last election, a lot of it was driven by the downside of social media.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only going to get worse. I like to read cheerful books, and the one that I've now given 25 or so copies away is this cheerful book, and you can't read the title. It is, "This is How They Tell Me the World Ends: The Cyber Weapons Arms Race." What's going on in the front end of technology, from cyber weapons And the Russians have just said within the last 24 hours that they may exercise some of theirs. What's going on with social media? I would be a complete idiot if I made a knowing response to your question. I think we are all in a state of shock. And I will tell you that there are, and I hate to be like this, and I seldom am, there are 7 billion people on Earth, and Mark Zuckerberg's in my bottom 10. You know, I remember reading, I don't remember where it was. We design things to encourage disagreement and contention. That is so, if you and I are pissed off at each other, they're going to get more clicks. Because, our piss offness is going to attract all kinds of people, and then we'll have a social media war. So you're right. I would have said very advantageous. I was in the Bay Area, and the first internet device I used or conversation I had was something out of Sausalito by a guy by the name of Stuart Brand, and it was called The Well. And, the well preceded everything else. And it was just so miraculous. But I fear for my kids. I fear for my grandkids. I'm utterly terrified by what's going on. That was Zuckerberg on the phone.
So Tom, we have exactly 1 minute left. So I want to pass it back to you for anything that you want to share with emerging leaders who shape policy in the world, influencing teams, handling technologies that are not invented yet. When you look to the future, what should we keep in mind?
With what's happening with their brothers and sisters in Ukraine right now, it's certainly not right to get, that should color everything we talk about. Man's inhumanity to man staggers the imagination. But I would say that kind of drives my long-term point relative to your real or virtual team of 6 or 7 or 17. Thoughtfulness, kindness, and caring pays off in the eulogy, and it pays off at the bank, frankly. And there's enough research on that to sink a ship. The person, other than some of the horrible political people that I put at the bottom of my list with Zuckerberg, is Milton Friedman, who gave us the shareholder value maximization idea, which took over. When he wrote his article in 1970, 50% of profits went to shareholders and executives, and 50% went to people and research. They did a study in 2014, that's 44 years later, 91% of profits went to shareholders and executives, and 9% went to people and research. If that ain't a criminal act, I don't know what the hell is. But make life a little easier and help people with their growth. And McKinsey did this study, 615 companies, 167 of them were defined as people who invested for the long term rather than the short term. The performance of the ones who invested for the long term was so much higher than the rest of them that you couldn't even see the tail end of the line. So think long term, think about people, think about what you could tell your child or your spouse about the day that you had at work, and make the world a little bit better with your products and services and interactions. And as I said, this is not said to you by a lifelong Catholic who goes to Mass 7 days a week. This is said to you on the religious side by a long lapsed Presbyterian. And, this, whatever. And we will all pray for a little bit more peace as we move forward.
Tom Peters, an absolute inspiration, delight, and an honor. Mary and Tom?
Yeah, thank you, Tom.
Thanks,
What a
Tom.
pleasure.
Well, thank you all. I have enjoyed it immensely. Not only say joy, we've talked about things that were very deep and human and so on. It's been great to meet all three of you, and I don't know you very deeply personally, but you seem like a nice crowd to me.
Likewise,
Thank you for that.
likewise.